Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Cohen from IGI Cyber Labs and Nodeware. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for some of your folks, some of your peers to log on. Thanks so much for joining us today. As always, this is our open demo and live peer Q&A conversation, so people can have the opportunity to ask any questions, see a demonstration of the product. And to, prior to doing a proof of concept, if you're an MSP, trying to do any sort of evaluation. And as always, being a channel-focused company, we want to provide opportunities for our MSPs to get connected with end users that are interested in continuous vulnerability management. So we want to make sure that if you're an end user organization and you want to evaluate the product, you can do that, and then we'll connect you with one of our MSP partners and go from there. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? We'll go to the next slide. As always, for those of you that have been on before, as I said, this is an opportunity to see the Nodeware product. We'll talk about continuous vulnerability management versus the scheduling, monthly, Sunday nights, quarterly, that some of the other organizations do. Also, we'll give you a live demonstration. We'll show you how, through some of the deep scan capabilities, you can save, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars on your tech team and your tech staff with the vulnerabilities that are identified, as well as some of the immediate alerts and new devices that are showing up, plus the new reports that we've now developed. And then obviously we'll answer any questions as well. We'd like to keep this as collaborative as possible. So we'll go to the next slide. As always, just so you know, we do a number of webinars. This is really focused on the product, as I said, and talking specifically with one of our partners today, McCourt from Integris. We will get to him in just a second. But we also have our continuing cybersecurity thought leadership series. We have two more coming up. We have one with Julian Lee coming up on the 9th, talking specifically about how MSP and SMB leaders can build effective partnerships. And then Tony Sager from the CIS program, talking specifically about the CIS 18 and how frameworks and compliance trends are changing, how they're adapting, and how end user organizations are having to meet the new compliance requirements, the new regulatory requirements, and things that they're doing with folks like the CIS 18 and other frameworks. So feel free to register for either one of those or go to our LinkedIn page and be able to register there. Those are conversations to hear from those subject matter experts. As I said, we're fortunate enough to have McCourt here with us today. He runs the vCISO program at Integris. He's also one of our advisory board members. We are thrilled to have him here with us. They have been a long partner of Nodeware and have been rolling out continuous vulnerability for some time. So before we get started, if anybody has any specific questions for Nick or some specific questions for us, we're happy to take those questions, or we can dive into the specific conversation around the product and go from there. We did get a question that said, will this be available for later for my two engineers who were not able to attend? The answer is yes. We will have a recording of it. It will be up on our YouTube channel, and we can send that link out to you on email as well. So that is available to everybody. So we did get one question about client support, and what I think I'll do is, Nick, since they asked the question, I don't know if they asked specifically for Nodeware or if they asked specifically for Integris, they asked about a client support model. Maybe you want to spend a couple minutes talking about how you support your clients, and then we can talk, we'll do the demo, and then we can talk about how we support our MSP partners.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Integris actually, while providing vulnerability management, we have our service teams help to support findings. Some of it, and a lot of vulnerability management, as important as it is, can be correctly responded to. The remediation can be handled through proactive patching and communication between the MSP and the client. And so, the idea, of course, is, when you have findings, a lot of times it has to do with how are we managing the patch management system. What we found is that if you are scanning and finding these vulnerabilities, it actually encourages that client to start kind of paying attention to some of the cadence. And so this becomes, an incredibly valuable tool, not just to find vulnerability management, but to foster the relationship with that client and bring them closer.
Perfect. Well, I'm sure we'll get a lot more questions specifically about Integris and how Integris, supports your customers, transitions your customers, and and what you're doing to evolve as the requirements for cybersecurity are changing, the liabilities for cybersecurity are changing, as well as we talked about earlier with Tony Sager, some of the frameworks, some of the compliance and regulatory issues that are now facing small businesses, and some thoughts you might have and some recommendations you might have about how you support them. So with that, why don't we move to the demo, Frank?
Yeah, and actually, I was just going to say to follow up on that, Nick, as I go through, there's a couple spots I might say, hey, we found this. How do you support your customers given what you're seeing and what you're utilizing there? So
sounds good.
Yeah, that'll be good. So, all right. So just confirming you can see my screen here, the demo site only. Okay, so this is Nodeware, and I'll kind of just kind of reiterate a couple key points, right? This is continuous scanning of vulnerabilities, normal business hours, not having to schedule, point in time scans, and there's a huge number of benefits. But a couple of the key things that to get to this point, what is available and how you would roll this out, right? So this is a point, right, when we're looking at your customers. To get to this point, there's a couple options you have to start your collection of data. The most general and sort of widely available is a virtual network sensor. So you can put on any device on a network. Could be a Windows sensor that goes on a PC or a dedicated Intel NUC computer or a desktop system that's always on, or you can put it onto a server. However you want, but that's kind of the broad fishing net that will go out and find every IP address on the network. So that includes, cameras out on the edge. It includes VoIP phones, printers, firewalls, any device, including, iPhones and Android devices that come onto the network via the Wi-Fi or the authorized Wi-Fi. Not necessarily a guest, but you wouldn't want to put it on a guest network. But any corporate Wi-Fi device that is connected, we're going to pick it up and identify it. That's the sort of the first play in the first broad net. To get more specific to devices that may be remote, right? Everybody's got remote customers, remote employees, either fully remote or in and out. Well, for those devices, we have agents that can be put onto a Windows or a Mac or some Linux endpoints as well. So at that point, you have the internal network, you have the remote network or remote devices. And then thirdly, we can also check for external websites that you're under your management. You can include them as a quick glance to make sure that they're up to date and no weird ports get opened or new vulnerabilities get affected onto a public facing site. So three points of collection, and we'll get that again. That's kind of where we've gotten to this point here. With that rollout, and by the way, Nick, I don't know if you've seen how as you roll out customers, but we're really for a Windows sensor, we've had time and time again an MSP is saying they're getting the customer up and running within 15-20 minutes when deploying a Windows sensor.
So we actually just had a rollout regarding this with an organization, and they were able to set up a sensor in 5.
Oh wow!
I think that this is one of the most exciting parts actually, and one of the reasons why we like this. You can virtualize the sensor, you can have a hardware appliance, or you can put it right on a Windows server. And One of my favorites was we installed Nodeware sensor on a very small domain controller up in Azure. And the domain controller itself was an older version domain controller that had to be kept around for specific reasons, but it had like less than 4 gigabytes of RAM. So we don't have a lot of space to do a lot of stuff. The hard drive was small. It was really there for a small but kind of very powerful organization with what they were doing. But we put this thing on and got it up and running in about 5 minutes, and the server has never had an issue.
Wow. Yeah, great. Yeah, both the performance and the storage requirements are very small, and more importantly, from what allows us to do the continuous is the bandwidth back and forth. The communications is minimal, right? We've seen on a full network sensor, it's, I mean, you know, we'll say less than 3%, but it's usually less than 2%, which is totally unnoticeable, right? So if it's running on a company network, there's no worries about clogging the network, you know, shutting down normal usage, normal business usage to run a scan. So very, very efficient in multiple ways. Oh, okay, so let's just do a quick dive into what we'll just take a look at this customer here, this Aperture. This is a demo environment, so just don't think we've got too crazy of customers, but we're looking at this device here, right? So we've got a full range of devices that are on this network up here. You can see there's 19 that have been scanned, there's 17 that are currently online. And we know that because we're also scanning every minute to ping the devices that we've discovered to know whether they're online. And that also leads to us to be able to identify new assets that come onto the network. It could be BYOD, could be nefarious effort trying to come onto the network. As a tech or as a user of Nodeware, you're going to get an alert that that new device has been found. Here's IP address. Here's where you know. Here's what you need to know. Now go discover and figure out whether it's legitimate or not, and make sure it's current. So we can do that at that point. So that kind of is along the left over here. You can see the little green eyeballs. Then we also are capturing the IP address, the MAC address, the fingerprint. So those three are discovered within, depending on the size of the network, you're going to have all that data within half hour to an hour at the most, where you would know all of that. But again, depending on the size, you're also going to get a scoring of the devices, of each individual device, based again matching against our massive database of known CVEs and other vulnerabilities that have been published. We're matching that, continuously updating those. So it's again continuous from the front end to the back end is really what we mean by continuous. And so you know, again, at this point, we got a couple troublemakers up here with 0 scores. We got some in the under 950, which means kind of, hey, caution, there's something you need to take advantage or take care of. And then above 950 is kind of in the green. You're probably okay, but worth keeping an eye on, just again, because things change daily and hourly. So let's go and take a look at this Windows server, which has actually got an agent based on it. And you can see that it's an agent because of this nice little secret agent man up on the top here, and it tells you that it's agent based. So in this particular server, right, it's basically a raw new installed server without any patches done. So it's as raw and out of date as possible. But you can see because of that, there's over 1,700 different vulnerabilities found and warnings that are relevant to take care of. So God, we hope that you ever have a system online that needs to do that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Nick, there might be some background, and I don't know if it's coming from.
I'm currently muted. Is the background worse now with me?
No, now it's much better.
Okay, well, I'll just leave myself unmuted.
Stay unmuted.
It's better with me unmuted. Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So in this case here, right, so it's got an agent, which means the device is by default is a credential scan, and we are getting detailed information. Again, the agent is on the system and has full access. So we can look at any one of these. I'll just pick this one critical one here. And at this point, you can see a specific description of the vulnerability through there. You can see the specific CVE that's an issue, and we're providing the specific CVE file that's missing, which is causing that vulnerability. Now we've been doing this. We've called this scan for quite a while, for a number of years into product, but we've recently been able to sort of display this information. And I know, Nick, you've got some particular data found on this in terms of what this finds. And let me finish this one piece here, and then I'll have you describe how you guys have used this particular solution. So in this case, if you know that, if you know your ins and outs of Microsoft, great, go to it and find it. But we've also provided a direct link into the Microsoft Security Advisory site for that particular CVE. So you're not having to search on Google for the CVE. You're not having to search Microsoft. We're taking you right to the site where you need to download, patch, do whatever you need to do to get the data and the information about that known vulnerability. So, Nick, yeah, maybe you could just describe again. You guys gave us some of the statistics early on about what this is saving your techs on a daily basis.
Oh, well, and let me start with kind of the history of this, right? And this is with a lot of different types of vulnerability scans, but historically, hey, there's a vulnerability. Here's some information on it. And in the meantime, when you have centralized services or dispatchers that their job is to really work on the patch management, trying to keep systems up to date, they've got to go searching for the vulnerability. And so what this ends up being is a massive game changer, where instead of going, okay, I have a vulnerability, I now have to compare the vulnerability with where I might find it, I've got to go search around. This just brings it all right there to your fingertips. And so what it does is it cuts down on the overall time for a technician or a network administrator to actually find and figure out how to remediate the vulnerability. It's right there. Here's the location. This is where you go. And so what we saw was, where you might have somebody doing research on this from anywhere from an hour to a couple of hours. They might have to go through and script out some sort of update. Now we're talking about finding, discovering it, and being able to fix it somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what it is. And that was a huge game changer and a fantastic addition to this tool for how this integrates in with taking care of a network.
Awesome. Yeah, we've heard from multiple just that, oh, I don't have to go searching, it's right here. Oh, thank you. It's definitely a big value add, time save for them. And again, to put that into dollar standpoint, right? That could be an hour or two saved per day per tech. That quickly adds up to $30,000-$40,000 in increased productivity over the course of a year. Or maybe you don't have to hire that extra tech that was doing the research or that was research. It can really be a game changer in a small or a large MSP, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nick, not to put you on the spot, but do you think that type of thing, overall, may allow you to avoid hiring a cyber tech, towards the end of the year that you would have had to bring on board otherwise?
It might. I think, again, it's IT, right? We're growing in cybersecurity. It's growing. I know there are a lot of things going on with the market, and things continue to be constantly evolving. But the simple truth is, as mentioned, this would actually save that overhead. So an organization might not necessarily have to hire an additional person to do the same work, but it also allows them to look for growth elsewhere, and that's huge benefit.
I would say nothing else. It's allowing your tech or the company in general to be a better value-added provider to the client, right? You're doing more things for them, more proactively, et cetera.
This makes services more scalable. That is very true.
Yeah. So I was just showing here another example of a case where it's actually telling you exactly where the problem is, right, within the system. So, giving you the file path to go in and get this redone. So again, lots of tips we can go in there and provide. So thanks for the insight there, Nick, and how you're using that. One of the other things I didn't mention is actually this tag feature as well. So, particularly on a larger environment or a larger customer where maybe you have a couple thousand endpoints or touch points being determined, we do an initial tagging for basic, you just want to look at Windows 10, you just click on the Windows 10 link. But let's say we wanted to provide have a custom tag, right? For let's call it finance, right? So we want to be able to tag any device that has finance that is related to finance. We can go back and find this. Oops, sorry about that. We can go in and tag a particular item now with that finance location, and it would come up here and we could click on it. So it could be finance, could be first floor, could be store 1282, whatever it was. You can provide that and get a quick sort. The other thing, let me see. We talked about sensors, just sort of the types of sensors, and these are the ones within our customer. So in this one, it's a Hyper-V. We also have the vSphere sensor. We've got the Intel NUC as a physical device if you wanted to put that on put a Windows sensor on that. So that's pretty supportive there. The other thing I think that's worth sort of bringing up is and then again, a lot of MSPs have told us is high value from what we provide is reporting. So reporting comes in two ways. You can do on demand. Let's say I'm going to a customer meeting in the afternoon and I need to get the latest executive summary for the customer. I could pick that and it's going to be up here in just a second, providing me that latest detail. See, it's already ready to go. So I'm going to download it, get it there, and I can view this quickly. I'll say, okay, 840 is my latest number. I can go in and say, hey, last month it was 800 and we've done these three things and now it's 840. Here's our progression. Here's our roadmap, et cetera, et cetera. So you get, the top 10 most common for that customer, kind of where they're spread, and then just a little bit more information. This is not branded at all by IGI or Nodeware, so you can put your own logo in here and deliver that with real current real-time data to your customer. The other thing if you're dealing with any kind of compliance or auditing customers that need to make sure that you're tracking this data over time, you can just say, hey, make sure I get this on a weekly basis, on Saturday, and then these two reports for all my customers, and I can do it and save that. And those would be just showing up in this report here automatically, right? Every Saturday from going forward. So you can download it from here, put it to your archives, whatever you would like to do. There are about 8 to 9 different reports available. There's a full network report. If you want to look at externals, we talked about the executive summary. There's a top vulnerabilities report. If you want to just produce a report for that customer with their top vulnerabilities, maybe something you give to your tech. Hey, here's your project list for the next month. Go after these ones, or whatever it might be. A log4j inventory, an exceptions report if you want to be able to know who did what when, kind of who modified a system, who upgraded it. That would be provided within the exceptions report, and a couple other JSON and XML. So that's kind of the reporting tools. Again, very usable, insightful, not a ton of deciphering of what we're trying to provide to you. The other thing and I don't know, Nick, are you guys using any of the APIs currently, or are you just pulling the reports?
No, we've been playing around with the APIs. We love these reports, and kind of the most important part about this, you were mentioning the different types. There are different departments that need different styles of reports, and that's one of the big things. And so, of course, using the API has been really good for us because we started just pulling these directly into our system.
Right. Yeah. So if you got the capability, or we're using these APIs actually ourselves, right? All those data you're seeing here is based on pulling the APIs from our back end into a report. So, but if you wanted to, again, if you have some capability or interest, maybe you just want the alerts, maybe you just want the reports, or you want to get the data on all the information, you can set up all these different types of alerts. All the details, descriptions are there and available for you. So this is all beyond Greek to me, but those that know it, they know it, and they appreciate what we're providing to them. So that's all available in that regard.
Hey, Frank,
the last thing, yeah.
Frank, before we move on, so we got a question that we have a few co-managed clients that we serve. Is there an ability to add our co-managed IT managers / security teams to this platform and just have access to their site? So, I mean, Nick, why don't you
Happy
talk
to
about
answer that, absolutely.
Frank can show it.
Yep. So what we can, when we go into the customer, right, it's going to be customer specific. Down here in the bottom left is this team settings. And so I'm going to go into there, and now I have a range of different access and people that are on there. Mike Scott, if you happen to know who he is, he's a demo environment, but he's with Pawnee Park, with Thunder Mifflin actually. But we can invite a member. So from a co-managed standpoint, you just need to put in their name. There's 3 different levels of access. So there's an analyst, which is just basically for if you've got a co-managed IT site, you want to provide a, maybe this is the, executives. If you got somebody that's interested in just going in and looking every now and then, they can look at some of the basic data, but they can't make any changes or actions in there. Or they can make them as a technician, which is, again, somebody in the IT department that might want to be able to go in and do a rescan or just, look at some more detailed data. The administrator you wouldn't necessarily do per customer, because that gives you administrative rights to all the customers within your MSP. So that wouldn't be necessary. But let's say there's a technician and at Pawnee Park, select boom, boom, and you would invite them. So it's a very easy co-managed standpoint. And even back to the alerting, if we go back to the alert, just go back into our manage the customer. So from an alert standpoint, we can control, we have 3 different types of alerts that can go out. So, a new critical vulnerability is found, we can do an alert, or if there's a new asset found, right, again, somebody brings in a printer that, is wide open and vulnerable, or one of the sensors goes offline. So at that point, the email, there's 2 different connectors that we have. One is an email, so you can create as many emails, whoever you want to utilize, or you can put it into a Slack channel. But in a co-managed environment, it could be an email that goes to, the IT person at your customer. So when you get the alert, you can have multiple emails sent to multiple addresses, but if you wanted to have an extra person receive that directly, then they can. So a couple different ways to co-manage. I don't know, Nick, do you have any co-managed sites, customers?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I actually, in the capacity that I serve with my clients, I oftentimes will encourage them to have access to this. There's a little bit of a comfort zone that's needed for vulnerability management. And even if somebody is being added in as an analyst, they start to get comfortable. They start to be able to understand what we're doing, why we're trying to do it, whether they're a regulated client or whether they are non-regulated but still need this. It becomes very important. And we do the same thing with those alerts, where we will set them up, and oftentimes as they get a little further down the road, they actually start wanting to see those new device alerts, specifically for some of their networks.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting, I've heard this from a number of MSPs over time, and I think it's less so now, but they've, a lot of folks have been a little bit afraid to do a co-manage, right? They want to be the source and do everything. And it's like, okay, there's a fine balance between being able to do that sort of physically, if you will, and or, capacity wise. But, I think more MSPs are offering to co-manage, say, hey, we know you have an IT department, but let us do these other things, these specific things for you. We'll work with you. We'll provide you data imports in whatever you need. But being an outsourced IT is sort of effectively what it is. It's sort of looking at a different angle.
Well, it's again, this system, this product is still oftentimes considered magical, right? Historically, you would not deploy out a vulnerability management solution while people were working. You wait till everybody goes home. You wait 3 or 4 more hours more, make sure they've fallen asleep, then you deploy it out. In the meantime, and heck, even this past week, I had a response as, we were in the middle of a meeting, and I said, go ahead, deploy out a sensor, go ahead, push out the agents. And they went, well, but I'm pretty sure things are gonna blow up. And I said, do it. I'll bet you whatever you want to bet at this point, do it. And they said, I'll take that bet. So apparently I was gonna owe them a jet ski, by the way.
Wow.
But they deployed it out. There was no jet ski. There was no jet ski. I did not have to get a jet ski, but it was, for them, it was I want to know how this works, right? There was kind of that shock and awe value. And so, of course, we want to show them that value. And we're not really giving away any control or management of this by letting them see what's happening.
Right. No, that's awesome. That's the exact plan. I think it's a big market opportunity, right? For maybe it's a medium-sized business that's got 2 techs and they barely can keep them on staff, right? Just the recruiting away is huge, right? So if you can provide, up and down levels of services and value to them, they'll add more and more service to your bill. On the sensor deployment, one of the things I wanted to talk about, particularly from an agent standpoint. So let's say you want.
Hey, Frank.
Yeah.
I think you need to move a little closer to the microphone.
Okay, I'll try here. Maybe I just need to talk more to the mic rather than looking over here and talking. So, but the deployments of Windows sensors or agents, whether it's Mac or Windows agent, is very simple and straightforward. We provide the specific script of how to deploy. And I was going to go to this next, was on the support site. On the support, we have all kinds of great information there on deployment intros, how to do things, some videos. But on deployment, specifically, right, we have, how to deploy the external scans, where you want to deploy Nodeware agents, right? Here's the specific requirements, fingerprints. And in the case of if you're using an RMM to deploy, we have a script that you can, push out an agent quietly, so it just gets onto somebody's system. They don't even know you're just driving updates to them. And again, like we talked earlier, the load of the agent and or the communication with the agent back to the network is minimal at best. Or at worst, I guess. So it's very, very light, not noticeable to any impact on the corporate network or your home network or wherever you might be. So all those devices, again, easy deployment. Now, again, part of this, 5-minute deployment may be just a sensor, and maybe it's another little while to get all the agents deployed. But it's very straightforward. Again, we've been told numerous times by our current current subscribers and MSPs that the deployment is, exponentially easier and more straightforward than other solutions out there. So we're very proud of that fact. But let me just actually go back to support again, just real quick, just to reiterate again, lots of different resources here, articles, how-to guides, some of the different videos in here. So I don't know, Nick, if you guys are probably well advanced, probably don't need this very much anymore, but it is a good resource there for you.
Very much so.
Yeah. And, you can submit, if you have an issue, you can't find what you need or you just not working, you can always go in and submit a request here and just, provide your information, the description, and we will, we'll be able to support you very quickly. Our support is based in Rochester, New York, so where the product was developed and by some of the same people that developed the product. So our support team is there and available. You hate to be too committal, but it's minimally within a day. Sometimes it's often within hours that we are available to answer a support ticket and get on with you. So happy to do that. But I think you probably found this right. Once a technician or MSP has gone through 1 or 2 deployments, it's pretty straightforward, right? There's not a lot of support issues after that. You can pretty self-sufficient. So we like that. So I think that's it. Any other questions or things I've missed that you wanted to cover?
Excuse me. We've gotten 3 or 4 questions. So we ought to leave this up because I think we want to show a couple of things based on these questions. Okay. But somebody asked specifically, I'm an end user that has about, has got 500 employees. Why should I select, Nodeware, or how do I go about acquiring an MSP to partner with to help me with that? So Nick, maybe I'll let you kind of provide, your scenario to it, and then we can talk about it from the Nodeware specific standpoint as to how we would suggest an MSP goes about that.
Sure. Well, for Integris, it's been very simple. We're happy to have discussions with organizations that want to have this product or have picked up this product and said, hey, you know, how do I do this? What do I do with it? Keep in mind that, you know, you set up the product and maybe you're going to try to manage it yourself. And if you have the capacity to do that, that's good, because this is, again, it requires lower utilization rate. But at the same time, there's some stuff that goes into this, and oftentimes it's good to have people that run and work with this every day. So, you know, we work with organizations that just engage with us for this. We work with organizations where we might take care of all of your IT, or it may be that, you know, sort of ad hoc at times. And so we have multiple ways that we do it. But normally we like to engage with whomever is interested with this, because that usually kind of signals an organization that is, you know, interested in protecting themselves.
Yeah. And well, it's just I fully support what you say there, Nick. And I think if you know, the end user is, you know, not sure who to deal with, has, you know, if you've gotten to that size, then, you know, you probably have some IT staff and they're probably overwhelmed, right? So if you are interested in Nodeware and having, you know, we have national MSPs such as Nick and Integris. We have other local folks in across the country that if you're looking for somebody in Illinois or Wisconsin or California, wherever, let us know and we can find you. The good news, because this is a SaaS based and it's virtual, you know, the MSP doesn't necessarily have to be in your backyard or even in your region or state. So we you know, this tool in particular, and most of the tools that MSPs are using these days can be done pretty remotely. So, you know, once in a while a truck needs to roll or needs to, some, you know, equipment needs to be swapped out, but for the most part, this is accessible information. So, great question, though. Thank you.
So, the next question is, as an MSP that has not moved into cybersecurity, you know, why should I select Nodeware above all the other things that are out there? You know, and I'll give you my answer and then I'll let these guys respond. But, you know, I think it starts with, you know, continuous vulnerability management. I think, as Nick pointed out, the fact that Nodeware runs during normal business hours without any network degradation and provides you immediate alerts when a new device shows up on your network, provides you the deep scan capability to be able to identify where a vulnerability is and fix it very rapidly. And I think the fact that it is a, you know, it is a inexpensive, easy to implement solution. You know, Nick mentioned in 5 minutes they got a sensor up and running for somebody. I would go back to, I think you can quickly, as an MSP, quickly qualify a new prospect. You know, do they know what devices are vulnerable? Do they know when a new device shows up on their network? Do they care? And does that give the end user some peace of mind that they didn't have before as it relates to all of the increased cyber attacks that are coming their way? Those are kind of the things that come to my mind.
Yeah, I think one of the things in particular in that regard, Stuart, that I think we've heard this multiple times last week, is that you can't protect what you don't know is there, right? You don't, and specific example of that is we have, you know, I mean, if he's asked their customer, you know, we've got 50 employees, we think we've got 75 devices when you add up everything. Well, you know, as a prospecting tool or just as a, you know, a discovery of the customer accounts, you know, you can run a virtual, you know, put up a sensor for under a free trial or you know, deploy it. And, you know, they're finding 100 to 150 assets, right? When you add the cameras and you add the hidden printers and the, you know, I'll pick on the lawyers just because they're easy to pick on, but, you know, in the lawyer's office in the corner, right, he brought in a printer that he connected to the network that, you know, has easy access because it's Wi-Fi based, et cetera. So there's that part of the discovery is critical. And I think overall sort of plays into, you know, cyber hygiene play, right? It's easy to say, but, you know, it starts with knowing what you've got, right? You might need to get different kinds of tools because based on, you know, what you find and what you discover in there. But if you don't know what you have specifically and know how vulnerable there are, you can't go about fixing that. And that's really the first step in any kind of hygiene or cyber program. Nick, any other adds to that?
Nick, any thoughts?
managed service providers need to own vulnerability management. Historically, if you are a managed service provider and you do not provide vulnerability management, your clients will go to a third-party MSSP. They will come in, they will set up a scan. They will run that scan once a quarter, and whatever that scan is, the report is delivered usually a couple of weeks later. When that report is delivered, it goes directly to your client, and your client gets all this stuff. All these things, what is this, what is this, what is this? And they come back to you and say, why didn't you patch any of these things? So then you scramble as a provider to go back in and say, well, hold on, so this was reported on this day, the scan was run on this day, but the patch came out, you know, within hours of that, and we pushed out the patch. Why is it still showing? It's because that was a spot in time. What that does, though, is it starts to wedge you away from your client. And that's not necessarily always the intention of the MSSP, but they don't care all the time when it comes to vulnerability management. They're there to identify vulnerabilities. So in the meantime, as an MSP, if you haven't done this before, this is a tool, this is a very powerful tool that allows you to deploy for your clients. It also helps you manage those vulnerabilities. The idea is not to hide this from the client. The idea is not to say, oh, well, I saw that we had a couple things in red there. And, you know, Frank, you showed that, you know, that one section of assets. Oh, we've got this server 2019 showing in the red. Well, guess what? Hey, you know, it's actually better. It's proactive for you to go, hey, here's your report. Here's what's in the red. This is what we're doing to stop this. Keep in mind that there's sometimes, most often in my experience, there's a background story as to why something's in the red. My favorite was we had a report where the score was always at a 940, 950, higher, that sort of thing. It was really, really good score. And then all of a sudden it dropped and it stayed there for quite some time. And what had happened was the service technicians were going through and they were patching, but the CEO, the CFO, and the COO of the organization were never rebooting their computers. They were working late at night. They were trying to take care of the organization. And what they did is they had a third party come in and run a scan, and the third party said, what's up with these computers? And they went back into their emails and they saw all the emails going, hey, we need you to reboot your computer. Instead of causing an issue between us and that organization, it actually started building more trust. Hey, we've been here the entire time. We've been looking after you. Please listen to us.
Great. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So a couple of other things, you know, along with what you said, insurance companies are also going to start sending, you know, if an insurance company's got a cyber insurance policy with one of your end user clients, you can rest assured that the insurance company is going to start sending vendors to that end user organization to say, you know, what are you doing to make sure, you know, your policy's in place, your policy can be renewed, you're putting all the procedures in place to get there. So as an end user, you know, you either ought to be working closely with your MSP partner on continuous vulnerability management to meet some of the requirements. If not, it's going to come your way from an insurance organization as well. The other thing I would say is, you know, we partner with Security Studio, which has a holistic risk management assessment program. And ironically, because of the API that Nick was talking about, you know, they can take the output of Nodeware, drop it into the Security Studio assessment, and within 15 minutes, they have the ability to provide a full-blown assessment to their clients. And if they use some of the traditional monthly or quarterly scanning devices that are out there, they have to set it up. They have to set it up, you know, or reschedule it. It has to run for an hour, hour and a half, and then come back to them. And then they manually have to export it, cut and paste it into the assessment or the individual assessment. Could take them an hour and a half, 2 hours total time. And with Nodeware and the API, it gets integrated in less than 15 minutes. So it's a significant savings from that standpoint. We're doing the same things with a number of insurance companies. You're going to see us announcing things where the output of Nodeware will drop into insurance questionnaires, insurance policies, insurance renewals. So they'll be able to take the output of that and drop that into what they're doing. So we think that's another significant enhancement, and the way MSPs are going to continue to help and assist end user organizations, if you will. So we got a separate question about, how can Nodeware be used to enhance an RMM?
Say that again.
So it's how can Nodeware be used to enhance an RMM solution?
Well, Nick, it's all about the data, right?
It is. One of my favorite parts with this is, an RMM solution is based normally off of agents being installed on endpoints. That is correlated as part of, asset management. Oftentimes, and I actually I was in a meeting earlier today with an organization. They are undergoing an audit, and interesting enough, the report from the RMM actually had a very extensive and detailed list of assets. And then we were able to pull the report from Nodeware and provide that. And not only did it line up with all the assets in the RMM, it also detailed all the other systems. Some of them are captured by the RMM, but some of them aren't. And when they're not, it's kind of tough going in front of an auditor saying, sure, we've got everything. When you're sitting there with just the RMM report. And so we've done that directly for a number of different times. My other favorite part, just to kind of reverse that question, we love deploying these agents through an RMM. It's so easy. It's so functional. It will take 20 minutes tops to get it to everybody. Then, of course, we're just searching for the people that are offline, their computer's off, they're on vacation, that sort of thing, and going, hey, turn your computer on. As soon as they do, that gets scripted out.
Question to that, just so everybody knows, the sensors and the agents that both Frank and Nick have been talking about, you have an unlimited number of sensors and agents to use with Nodeware. They're all free. There's no additional charge for those. So as you roll out Nodeware, you have an unlimited number of sensors and agents to use. We did get asked a question about, can I use this as a prospect tool, and how long does it take to gather information for interpretation to be presented to a client?
Ooh, pick me.
We obviously,
Pick me.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Stuart.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead with your answer. I'll answer as well.
Yeah, no, we've done this a number of times actually, where we'll deploy this out, and I think it's 7 days for kind of a demo. But what we've done is actually deploy. Yep, there it is. Start the free 7-day trial. The cool part about this is when you deploy a sensor out, and Frank said it, 15 to 20 minutes. I know I said 5. That was our most recent. But the deployment, we were able to capture everything on a subnet almost immediately, and as it started tabbing them, we're just refreshing in front of the prospect, and they were going, whoa, because they're seeing, okay, here's the scan, it's queued up.
They didn't know we're there, for one.
Right, I mean, look at all this stuff. Yes, actually, we did have that very recently. They went, wait, because it's identified the device, it's identified the name, and they're like, that's not in our naming scheme, right? Because it's about that co-managed solution, right? Do we have co-managed solution? Yes, we do. Well, guess what? We're usually able to provide this within the course of maybe an hour or two with a full report, but oftentimes we're able to deploy it out in front of them and really talk to them while it's happening.
Yeah. So again, one option, once your deployment is up and you've got some assets in your bank for some subscriptions, you can start the 7-day trial. Let it run for a few days again, because you've got iPhones that might be coming on. You might have other customers or employees coming in and out. So within a day or within a few hours, you're going to have some basic data. But after a couple of days, you're going to have all you're going to need to be able to make your case for that prospect of, hey, we found 150 devices, 10 of them are very critical. That's going to be a separate statement of work, by the way, to get those fixed while we're doing your managed services. So, it's an extra business opportunity beyond just managing their ongoing, departments and infrastructure. So that's a very easy. And by the way, when you run one of these trials, it's, whether it's 150 or 1,500, right? It's an unlimited number of assets that you can scan during the trial, because we want you to be able to see everything and get a full story, and it helps you protect and sort of develop the right pricing model based on what you're going to be managing. And so I'll just add to that, just in terms of to call it out, sort of our model with pricing, right? It's a subscription based to the MSP, or in some cases, if the end user is still on, you could have the full subscription for your environment. But generally, as an MSP, you have a subscription of, let's say, 1,000 assets, and you can spread them across. Like in this case here, you can see, we've loaded up in our demo environment. You have a subscription of this could be 500,
Right,
and you've got
back
48.
to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. The subscription model is to the MSP, right? So you might have a 1,000 subscriptions, and you're using 22 at one, 220 to another, 500 to a third. It's up to you how they are distributed and split. So we charge again that model. The product's available through TD Synnex, through the Ingram Cloud Marketplace, and also through Rain Network. And we have some other options if needed, and some other marketplaces coming as well. So lots of different ways to purchase, but again, it's very inexpensive. We found for most environments on a low volume, it's probably $1 to $1.50 at the most per month per customer. If you're counting by your employees, it might be $50 to $75 per month. For that customer base of 50. So just to give you some different range and pricing models. Again, but check your distributor or contact us.
We did get asked a couple of questions specifically around networks, and we are not a web app scanner, so that is separate and distinct from what we do. Just to make sure everybody's aware of, we are a vulnerability management tool as it relates to the devices and IP addresses, and we would ask you connect to a web scanner specifically about that.
And to your point, right, from a web scanner though, I did talk about externals, so we can look at these. A highly vulnerable.com. There's an issue there. Lots of different vulnerabilities found. But again, we can track externals as well as the network and the assets around it. So, any other questions, Stuart? Or we?
So I did get one question about do we have a simple report? And it might have been somebody who joined late. You might want to show the executive summary.
Sure. I'll just pull this one we just pulled at the beginning, so we can download it again from the site. And this executive summary is it's non-branded, so you can use it. Put your own logo on here if you want. But it gives you the top 10 vulnerabilities on that within that customer and the most common and where they're at. Kind of a profile of where they're at and how many are critical, etc. And then just some basic information about vulnerability scanning and why it's important, and a little bit about the tool. That's again available. You can, go on demand and pull that down, or you can just have it come to I won't call it the inbox, but you can have it come to the report dashboard and get them, every day if you want to make sure you always have the latest available.
And this gets back to something you can use. The question came in about, can you use the tool for prospects? You have the ability to run the trial. So if you're an MSP, that's using Nodeware, you could run basically free trials at the same time for additional devices. Today, it's up to 5 different pilots at one time. But if you want to spread that out for more, you have the ability to do that. You just have to come back to us specifically on that. And then you can use things like this executive report. You can use the one that your clients have today and that you show for your clients. as an example for your prospects as to whether the type of things they get in, as we talked about, in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 15 minutes after an initial scan is done. So the 7-day trial, should be plenty of time for you to evaluate and be able to present and articulate a very strong value proposition to your prospects and to your clients that need to transition from, IT to cybersecurity solutions, to a full-blown vCISO capability, some of the things that Nick was talking about. So we only have a couple of minutes. If there's any other questions, please get them in now. Otherwise, Frank, why don't I go to you first, and then Nick, I'll come back to you. Frank, any remaining thoughts that you might have before we get to the top of the hour?
No, I would just say, I think, again, simplicity and straightforwardness is kind of a hallmark here. And, whether it's simplicity of deployment, of the reporting, of the remediations, right? We're not going to do the remediations, but we, as Nick said, we're taking you right up to that point. So, the continuity, continuous scanning and vulnerabilities are, whether it's insurance, compliance, just basic business sense, right? It's becoming a requirement to protect your environments and your business. So we love to, go do some more demonstrations, a little more deeper dive, however you'd like. But hopefully we've helped answer some of your questions today.
Nick, any thoughts?
This is pretty much required for anybody that has to have cyber liability insurance. If you don't have it, then you probably won't have insurance. If you're regulated, this is required. This is a required system, whether you're in legal, whether you're in automotive, whether you are in finance, whether you're in biosciences, government, just about anybody. You need to have this. You need to have this system. You also need to have a system that runs continuously, because there are vulnerabilities reported sometimes daily. And it's huge in today's atmosphere to have this, because it's very much a proactive system.
So we got 2 minutes left. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. As I said, we have these coming up as well. We have the open office hours for those of you that are 7-figure MSP members coming up on the 3rd. We also have the 2 cyber thought leadership events coming up with Julian Lee and with Tony Sager from the Center for Internet Security. Those are really designed to be, public service announcements. Ask any questions you have, learn from them, get their perspectives. We've had thousands and thousands of people come on those sessions over the last year and a half. As always, we want to connect end user organizations to MSPs that need help, that need assistance. And we want to make MSPs, smarter about what we're doing with Nodeware and how do they help, provide the right kind of solutions for their clients, and how do we identify prospects for them in a simple, easy manner. I want to thank everybody for your time today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to Integris. There will be a recording of this available up on YouTube, and we will follow up with everybody with a couple of emails as well. But thank you very much for attending today. And as always, the thing that's changed the most is, Sunday night scans, quarterly scans, monthly scans were, probably appropriate a couple of years ago. But with the frequency of attacks and the number of small businesses that are under attack, you have to be doing continuous vulnerability management scanning. And if you're not, as one of our partners likes to say, if you're not doing continuous vulnerability management scanning, you're just doing risk gambling instead of risk management. So I thought that was a great quote. I'll leave you with that today. And thank you very much for your time.
And actually, I've got one other quote that I'll throw in there, is that if you, a lot of the SMBs are worried they're not, or just fear they're not going to get hit, and it's not a question of if they're going to get hit. You're just not going to make the news, right? So, think about how your customers, if they get hacked, then it's not going to make the news, but it's going to happen. So.
And for any of our other MSPs that are out there that would like to join us on another one of these open demo peer Q&A calls, let us know. We'd love to have you on just as we have Nick on today. Nick, thank you as always for your partnership and for your business and for the opportunity for us to do more around the country as Integris grows. Thank you for your time.
Always a pleasure.